you ready to go for a cruise, man?
Bet, man.
All right, well, hook us up, bro.
Come on, is this another entry-level position
Yeah,
thing?
man. Come on, turn it. Just turn it over a little
I thought
bit.
this had a starter.
It does have a starter. 1928 Model A came with a starter. This one just doesn't work, so we're going back to old school method. Stick around, we're gonna show you a lot of cool stuff about this little coupe.
I'm ready to flip you over. Okay, here's our 1928 Model A, and this thing is awesome. Right off the assembly line, probably would have hit you for around $385 to $400.
Yeah, and they had a lot of variants, everything from coupes to roadsters to pickup trucks. In those 4 years, from 28 to 31, they sold almost 4.8 million rides.
Wow. But you would tote around town and get about 25 to 30 miles to a gallon.
With a whopping 40 horsepower.
Woo.
Now this one started out as a coupe. It's been chopped about 6 inches. It's got sort of a 30s, 40s, jalopy sort of hot rodder look to it. The fenders are gone. We've got truck brackets holding up the headlights. And if we step over here into my office, you can tell this is a 1928, by this red steering wheel here. Now, the Model A was really interesting because it was a leap forward from the 18 years they made the Model T. It had the first sort of modern pedal arrangement. You've got a clutch pedal, you've got a brake pedal, kind of like you think, and then you got a throttle pedal or maybe a button over here. That's just a dead pedal. And it came with a 3-speed with reverse, and you've got a parking brake. But what's interesting about these cars is some of the things that carried over from the Model T days on the upper end. So we've got spark control on this lever, so you're actually the PCM controlling your spark advance. You've got throttle over here, kind of redundant. A lot of guys call it cruise control because you can kind of set it, let your foot off, and go the speed you want, maybe a little bit slower or faster. Now over here you've got the choke. Now you'd pull this out, you crank the engine over about 2 half turns, and when you put it back in, then you actually turn it and you set your air-fuel ratio as you're driving, depending on the conditions and what the engine wants. So again, you're the computer, you are telling the engine what to do, and we'll let Willie show you what's on the other side of this firewall.
Another thing they did in the Model A's was move the gas tank up here to the top. The old Model T's had a gas tank underneath the passenger seat. There's stories of guys actually having to drive uphill backwards to get fuel to the carburetor. So you got this gravity fed situation that comes down here. Now Kev was talking about how you control that fuel ratio actually on basically the cruise control on the column, right? So that is this lever right here. You can see it function here. Here's the choke lever and the air fuel mixture. You pull it out, it shuts this butterfly valve right here so you can prime the car, give it a couple turns. So you turn that and it turns this little air fuel ratio in here. It's also talking about on the steering column how you could advance or retard spark. And that was the problem with a lot of these cars or a lot of these people. They would forget to retard that spark, go and start it with the starter, and they would shear the pin off in the starter. So that little lever on the steering column just simply did this right here, advance or retard the timing. And on this one, we actually have some chewed up teeth on the flywheel. So we're gonna have to go and start it manually. He's been pushing this car for the last 2 years off and on trying to get this thing to bite. So we're gonna take this thing apart, address those teeth that are chewed up on the flywheel, and see if we can't get it where he can start it every time with a little button.
Now before we tear this thing apart, we're gonna show you the old school method of crank starting it. Now the first thing you wanna do is put your spark up here. This is retarded. Too much advance is what causes that kickback, which can break the shear pin on the starter or your wrist. Now we're gonna give it a little gas. We're gonna make sure our ignition is off for the time being, and then I'm gonna hold the choke closed so when Willie gives it 2 sort of pulls, it's priming that carburetor. A lot of times you'll see fuel dribble out of it.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and do that.
And he said pulls, and that's very important. You always want to make sure that you have your thumb underneath that handle and you pull from this motion like this. You don't want to be on the receiving end of that compression kickback. 1.
All right, now that we've got it primed, I can open the choke back up. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna turn my ignition on. But you gotta be careful because you could get a waste spark. So if you've got the right conditions in the engine, you've got air fuel, you're on a compression stroke, sometimes you get a freebie and it starts all on its own. So we'll turn this guy on.
Imagine doing this in the winter, Detroit, 1929.
Come on. Look at that, son. That's how they used to do it back in the 20s and 30s. And what's really neat is you can come over here now Start advancing spark, it gets happy. Then you can back off the fuel because you're more efficient by adding that spark. So you can play around with this thing and come over here and do your trim. Get this thing sailing down the road.
Our friends at KYB suggest changing our shocks and struts every 50,000 miles. Now think about this for a second. Every mile we travel, a shock will cycle about 1,500 times. Multiply that times 50,000 miles, you get about 75 million reasons for valve wear. Here's what fatigues. In stage 1 fatigue, you have this little valve disc here. See how easy it is to bend? It sits on top of these cylinders. Fluid is getting pressed through here every time it hits a bump or goes over a pothole or something. So you can see over time how this will fatigue and just kind of wear out. So KYB suggests literally changing it every 50,000 mile shocks and struts. And as you know, KYB shocks and struts always available at Federated Auto Parts.
This segment of Two Guys Garage is brought to you by CRC Industries, makers of Brake Clean, the original aerosol brake parts cleaner.
All right, Will, I think I got the last my bell housing bolts on my side. How are you looking?
Good. Got them out on my side, got the motor mounts out. I think we're ready to pop this little sucker out.
All right. Well, hey, welcome back. We've got our 28 Model A Ford. Really cool coupe, chop top. But you know, we got a little bit of starting issues.
Yeah, it's got a flywheel. Some of the teeth are chewed up, right? So sometimes he goes and cranks it, it works, and other times it's a hit and miss.
Yeah, so it's either a push or a crank, you know, risk an arm and limb. So we're gonna fix that problem. We've already got, you know, all the fenders and everything. Well, we've got all the top, we've got the radiator out, we've got everything disconnected, and I think we're ready to pull this guy out. And you can see we're kind of going a little bit of old school. Like back in the day, you probably would have had, you know, wooden A-frame, you know, some rope and a block and tackle.
Remember that in the yard?
Little hydraulics, little ratchet straps. We're gonna cradle this guy right out. All right.
Okay, give it
A couple of pumps here. Now wiggle.
All right.
Nice. Okay. Looking pretty good. We'll get this thing out and start looking at that flywheel.
So we got it out, and it didn't take long for us to see some really chewed up teeth on this flywheel.
Look at that guy. Yeah, doesn't sound pretty, doesn't necessarily want to start that way. We'll go ahead and start pulling this clutch apart. And it's actually pretty conventional by what we're familiar with these modern days. So amazing that this clutch design has been around, maybe modified a little bit for, you know, almost 100 years. So we're gonna pull this guy apart. We'll have a clutch friction plate in there. And they had single and they had multi-disc clutches depending on application or configuration.
Trucks or something, right?
Yeah. Now what's interesting about these flywheels, I think they're in the neighborhood of like 75 pounds or some massive amount. It's just a little 4-banger engine, but that's why the flywheel is so heavy. Is once you get that thing moving, it's really hard to stall out. Like say in these things you get stuck in the mud or whatever, it won't stall out. So you get all that mass whirring and it helps you keep that momentum.
All right.
So let's pull that dude off. All right, we got our friction clutch dude here. So looks like that's been replaced at some point. That's actually not bad.
Too bad. Look at the safety wire.
Yeah, and a lot of these are safety wired in a lot of different locations. You know, modern cars, they have torque to yield fasteners.
Right.
A lot of technology on how to keep all that stuff from shaking loose.
Back in the day, they just put some wire through it and tie it up.
Yeah, I can't imagine on the assembly line, right? Because you're supposed to be spitting these things out. Some guy's in there trying to feed wire and twist them around, and it's amazing how these things were built. Well, we're going to remove these bolts here, and we're going to wrestle this guy and see if we can get it off without breaking a toe. So let's get some cutters and looks like the right socket and pull that guy out.
Ready?
Yep. Let's get the starter out of the way. Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Cool.
Okay.
Let's flip this guy down. Now what you can see is we've got a big kind of cast iron flywheel and then probably a nice sort of semi-hardened steel ring gear. And actually, this is not sitting on here flush. It's kind of wobbled on there, so that might account for why that starter and pinion aren't engaging right. So you probably don't have the right engagement depth on there. All right, let's get this stuff cleaned up. We've got a new clutch, we've got a new ring gear, we got a new pilot bearing. we'll get this guy ready to go back together.
Can't wait. Bam. All right, Kev, here we go. Wow, you could even see, look at that gap you were talking about. That should be seated up against the side of it.
It's not even seated, right? So it's like way out this direction.
Some of these teeth are all gnarled up, chewed up.
Yeah, definitely not put on properly and seated correctly. Ooh.
Ooh, look at this, ball peen hammer marks. Somebody was obviously pretty upset at this thing when they were trying to get it. And some of that unevenness you were talking about between the ring gear here. So,
you know, it's not in the, Chilton's handbook or anywhere else to install a ring gear with anger.
Sure.
And brute force. So we're gonna do, you can see some of the shrapnel in here. We're gonna try to take this ring gear off a little more gracefully than how it was put on. And we're gonna use that caveman tool called fire. All we're gonna do is work around this thing, get it nice and hot, let it expand, and because we've got it jacked up on blocks, hopefully the thing will just kind of drop right down so we know when it's fully cooked. Yeah! Sweet. The mighty fire.
Nice.
All right.
Boom.
All right, so a little hard to get off because of all the kind of mangling and stuff on there. We're gonna check this out, make sure we can clean everything up, and slap the new one on.
Tony, hot dogs?
Yeah, I'm getting kind of hungry. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, you're gonna see a whole lot of cool stuff that makes these Model A's run.
This segment of Two Guys Garage is brought to you by Magnaflow Exhaust Products. Quality, power, sound.
Okay, so we're back with our Model A, our 1928 Model A. We've already got the motor out of it, sent the flywheel off to get it resurfaced. And now we're gonna take a quick look at some of the cool aspects of the old flathead that came out of this. Now, most people are interested in seeing a carburetor, used to seeing a carburetor on top of a motor. Not the case with this one. Check this out.
Yeah, this is actually an updraft carburetor. You know, it's pretty low. You're normally thinking about a carburetor up here. And when we started the car, we talked about, pulling the choke. And that's this butterfly right here. And back here, I mean, it seals pretty good. So when you do those, intake strokes, you're not getting much air in. You're actually pulling the fuel in. That's getting everything primed. So that guy sits down here. You can tell this is sort of a Model B, not a Model A carburetor, because your inlet's coming from this direction versus coming in from the side. Kind of a little hot rod upgrade, make a little more power.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
40 horsepower.
Yeah. This is 40 plus now.
Yeah. One of the first things you notice is this distributor. I mean, just look at the wires. These things are just blatant steel.
Yeah.
Actually, I've seen some of these use barbed wire before. Anything you basically had around the farm or the field or whatever.
Back in the day, some hay, right? Some tree branches, barbed wire. Well, this guy, he's look inside. We know it's actually been modified. Kind of some 50s technology. We've got a point system in here. But even though this has been upgraded, this is getting a little bit sloppy.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, rebuild this distributor, get the shaft, spinning nice and tight in there. So we'll go pull this guy out. Now, but before we do that, we want to find TDC so everything goes back in nice and clean.
Yeah, one of the cool things they did was a timing pin, right? So you had this little pin from the factory. So you loosen this up and you literally turn it around and put it in. There's a timing gear, cam gear in here. So you just insert this little guy here and you wait to find that indentation. You'll see it's just a recess into the timing gear and you'll actually see this guy pop back out. So I got it. There's the sink.
Yeah,
see?
we already kind of found it, right before we started here. So
see that little indentation? Just that little indentation in that cam gear, timing gear, and you can tell right there, you got top dead center. So kind of a cool little treat.
That timing gear is driving the cam down here in the block. And this inspection cover, you can see tappets, valves. The valve is actually upside down. It seals, your valve job's actually in the block, not the head. Yeah. And the head just comes down, captures it in, makes the flathead. So let's go ahead and pull this nut here. I can break this guy loose. And loosen that nut a little bit.
There we go. Wow. Yeah, I'd say that's a little worn.
Okay, let's get this thing over on the bench. We got our distributor kind of pulling apart here. We've got our little point system. And we've got our wibbly wobbly little shaft in there we're going to replace the bushings on. So we can slide out the old guy, one piece design. We got the new one, which is two pieces with this little collar, little drive there. Now what we're going to do is replace these bronze bushings. There's one sitting up at the top, one sitting here at the bottom. Now, good tip on how to get them out, you can take a 1/4 MPT tap. Newman, my buddy, showed me this one. Slide it in here, give it a little crank until it bites into that bushing. Now you can take, 1/4 inch extension, drive it out from the back side, boop, and you can do the same thing with the other one. Now to get them in, we're going to take the new shaft. It's got a little collar right here, little shoulder. We can slide that bushing on, and we can come over here and carefully drive that new bushing in from both sides. So we're kind of ready to rebuild this unit. Now one thing we did is we took a little aftermarket upgrade here. Now you can see the original shaft and this one here. Now if you look, there's a little hole drilled in there. Now that hole feeds down to this hole, which is where this bushing rides. So you got an oil can that you typically go around a lot of these old cars and you hit all these spots and oil them just to keep them running right. Well, now you got an extra spot that you can oil and you can keep that bushing lubricated, so this thing will last a lot longer the second time around. So we're going to put this thing back together, get it on the engine, put the flywheel on, get it back in. Hopefully we're going to take a drive, but in the meantime, let's take a break. Hey, welcome back. We're in the break room.
Yeah.
Tip for you, locking fasteners.
Dude.
Keep all your parts where they're supposed to be in one place and performing like they should.
These things are awesome too, from Stage 8 locking fasteners. It's really a visible mechanical locking system. You have the nut, whether it's headers or any sort of application, whether it's 4-wheel drive, whatever you want to use, and you really want to visibly lock it. Slide this little guy right over top of the bolt, and you get in here with the C-clamp, right? C-clip, and then you just brink. And right there is a truly locking fastener. You can visually see it, visually inspect it. For example, headers, all that thermal expanding and contracting going on. A lot of times those work their way loose and so forth, right?
How many times do you hear that little next thing you know, it's burned through the side of the gasket?
Yeah.
Time to put a whole new one on. Well, what's neat about these is, like you said, they're locking, so this guy would butt up against a flange. This is a turbo kit, so, used to be just headers, now you got turbos, now you got all kinds of stuff. Whether it's your harmonic damper, it doesn't matter if you want it to stay on there. And what's great is that little visual. I see the little clip on there. I know it's good. I don't even have to check it. Aerospace applications, military applications, these are all made in the USA. Duplex nickel, really good stuff from Stage 8.
Hey, next up from Crown is Salt Eliminator. Man, I go out to Bonneville a lot. You'll see these guys just
on the caseload. I mean, you're just whipping up tons of salt everywhere.
Yeah, man.
But if you're not on the Bonneville Salt Flats, you're probably driving through, northern winter, snow, icy conditions.
Yeah.
So you're going to fling that salt up in just about everything as well. Whether it's under the bottom of your car, whether it's on your floor mats, you name it. So this is great. It breaks the salt down. You spray it on. Wait about 10 seconds, and depending on whatever material it is, whether it's the plastics, your carpets, your metals, you name it, your painted surfaces, you wipe it down, you rinse it off. It's a great way to get that salt off real quickly, keep your stuff from getting corroded and messed
steel,
up.
carpet, concrete. It's safe on the environment as well. Crown Salt Eliminator.
Willie, sometimes you feel like a real man when you can push your 3/4 ton truck around your shop by yourself.
Indeed, man. LMC Truck brings us the heavy-duty dolly set. It's a set of 4 of them, and literally these things rotate any direction you want, make getting tight places in your truck, your vehicle, moving things around it easy.
Yeah, forwards, backwards, and sideways. Shove it into a corner, make more space, pull that project out when you're ready to work on it.
Heavy-duty casters. These things are indestructible. Again, a set of 4 of them.
Yeah, 1/4 inch steel. Great way to hook your project up, clean your shop, push things around. LMC Truck has everything from the sort of mid-late 40s and up for your Fords, your Chevys, your GMCs, and your sort of mid-90s and ups on all your Dodges. Check them out, get your free catalog. There's a ton of stuff in there for your cool ride.
LMC Truck. Kev, I gotta tell you, man, a cool thing, I had a skateboard as a kid, I put an STP sticker on it. I swear, I think it made it roll faster.
It did, man, it did. Watch out for that big hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is STP, or fuel system, complete fuel system cleaner.
Yeah, put a lot more detergents in there, keeps your fuel injectors clean. You don't want the gunk up in there and sticking and so forth. So it actually saves you gas.
Yeah, the back of your intake valves, you get more performance. Whether it's the top of your pistons, you get a lot of carbon buildup. Those can be hot spots, so you can pre-ignite, you get knock earlier. Means you got got to run a higher octane fuel so you're not knocking. So it's a great way. They recommend doing about every 4,000 miles. When you change your oil, you top this guy off. This right here will do about 21 gallons in a little bitty bottle. Great way to keep your whole fuel system clean from all the way from your pump, your tank, your injectors, all the way through your combustion system.
It's STP Complete Fuel System Cleaner right there.
For more information about anything you've seen on today's show, check out speed.com or visit TwoGuysGarage.com.
Oh, that's perfect. That thing's squared up nicely. Hey, welcome back. Now, we took a little break while you guys were taking a break, had some brats, got a little lunch in us, and baked our ring gear nice and toasty.
Yeah, we actually got this thing sitting on the grill, got it good, toasty, all cooked to specs. And overnight, we froze the flywheel, actually added some dry ice to it this morning. And as you saw, it just dropped right on, man. Made it easy.
Just sank right down there, seated perfectly. This
more-
one's gonna be a lot better than the last mangled job.
No more ball peen hammer marks around the ring gear. So it should sit in there nice.
Yeah.
Got the surface dialed in too.
Yeah, and you can see we've got the pilot bearing in, a nice cartridge, sealed bearing. You know, maybe not like they used to do, but.
No.
So we got the machined surface there for the new clutch material. We got the new clutch over here. So we're gonna start assembling this thing, get it back together. Before you know it, that engine's gonna be in the car, and we might just have to take it for a cruise.
I'm all about that.
Can't wait to hit that starter.
I know.
Starting to find her home. You know what, guys? I hope you learned a lot about the Model A.
Yeah, some old school classic stuff.
Yeah, a little bit about the early history of cars and how they work, and a lot of stuff looks just like it is today, almost.
Yeah, we got a couple more wires, few hoses, and we're gonna take this thing for a ride. But unfortunately, we're out of time.
Yep, so we'll have to see you next time.